You know what I'm saying? It's something called the Tyrone Mays rat experiment. He ended up getting it from another psychiatrist in 1840. They took a few hundred rats, right? And they splitted them and they divided them. And what they did was they created an environment for both of these rats to live in. In one subject, they took about 100 rats and they put it in an environment where it had clean water. They put it in an environment where it had a right amount of space for the rats can, basically if they wanted to be by themselves, they could. They made sure that it was good food in there that didn't have any type of poisons put inside the foods. They even gave them space to breathe, to go upstairs, downstairs. They just gave them this abundant environment, right? They put these rats in there. Mind you, these are the same rats with the same genetical molecular structure, which is nothing different. They both came from the same mama, the same daddy, the same family tree, right? Then they put the other 100 rats in a bad environment where they didn't get water. If they did get water, the water actually had acids in it. They made sure they didn't give them the regular food. I think they gave them like cat food or something like that with a bunch of pellets that was inside of them, right? They stuck them on top of each other and they made sure that the space was very, very small. They never cleaned any poop out of the maze. They never cleaned, they pissed out of the maze and they left them in there. They left them in there for 4 months and they watched how their behavior changed. They went back and they got the actual rats that came from the good environment and they put them in the maze. They ended up going through the maze very, very fast. Then they ended up going to get the rats that they put in the bad environment and put them in the maze, and they didn't know how to even make it through the first section of the maze. So he like, maybe this is a coincidence. So he did it. So what he did was he switched the rats. He took the rats that was smart, that made it through the maze, that was in the good environment, and he put them in the bad environment. Then he took the rats that was in the bad environment, that was dummies that couldn't make it through the maze at all, and he put them in the good environment. He waited 4 months, then he took them back out. The same rats that was good and smart, that was in a good environment, that he put in the bad environment, now they couldn't make it through the maze. The same rats that was in the bad environments, that was dummies that couldn't make it through the maze, he put them in a good environment. Now they making it through the maze and making it through life just fine. So he said, damn, it ain't the genetics, it's the community. It's the environment that you put these biological entities in that changes the way they interact with their environment and with themselves. Did you know he did another 6-month experiments on the same rats that he left in the bad environment? Guess what they started doing? Killing each other. Some of the male rats started humping other male rats. Homosexuality. Look, the other rats that was at the bottom that didn't have the food, these went upstairs to the other rats and started robbing them for food and water. I said, damn, this sound like your typical project. Don't this sound like the PJs? This is a real rat experiment. So it made me start questioning. I had to sit back and really rub my chin.
So they turned into robbing rats?
They turned into robbing, homosexual.
What else are you gonna do?
Rats.
It's a survival mechanism at this point.
Now check this out though, goddess. It was a selective group of female rats, and I really want y'all to look this up when y'all get home today. Watch this. It will f your mind up. The female rats, they started pampering themselves. They used to let their children just do whatever.
Get your kids. Get your children. Get your children. Get your children. Get your children.
All they was worried about.
Hood rats. Which one these?
See, these was the hood rats.
Okay.
The hood rats, right? Exactly. So the hood rats, I'm gonna quote that. The hood rats, all they did was pamper themselves. The only thing that they worried about was their fur. They worried about their weight. The only thing that they focused on was their actual cells. And then the father rats started going to other different parts of the actual rat experiment cage and started like bullying on the younger children. It was crazy, man. Look, it gets so deep when you really start watching it. It even rapists started happening. Rape with the older male rats in the community started raping the younger males and the younger female rats. Same thing that happens in the ghetto where a young girl will get touched on by their uncle, or a young male will get touched on by their uncle or their auntie.
With a team, he began feverishly designing and constructing habitats, sometimes referred to as universes, where he performed numerous smaller-scale and more controlled versions of his original rat study on a domesticated strain of albino Norway rat. These rats would want for nothing. All physical needs for a healthy rat lifestyle would be provided for them, including food, water, climate control, and nesting material. The design of these habitats was simple. The layout was a rectangle measuring 10 feet by 14 feet, divided into 4 equal sections by electric fences. 3 of these fences sported bridges over which the rats could climb, while one fence lacked such a bridge. He enticed the rats to use one of the center pens by making the spiral staircase to that pen's living spaces shorter than the others, though he admits this was a comparatively small factor. But the more insidious change was to their food supply. In half of the experiments, Calhoun supplied powdered food, but in the other half he placed feeders of his own design, consisting of hard pellets behind a wire mesh. Almost immediately after introduction, things began to go awry. The females, unsurprisingly, spread themselves out somewhat evenly through the pens, but after the males jockeyed for dominance and those of highest rank were determined, they began to distribute themselves strangely. Less dominant male rats will typically awaken earlier and begin to wander and forage for food, and due to the design of the pen, this meant that they usually would end up in the center sections to eat. During this time, the dominant males of the outer pens would wake up and begin guarding their respective territories. These few remaining males began exhibiting odd behavior. Though they would spend most of their time in the burrows with the females, hiding away from the dominant male, they would never attempt to mate with any of them. Instead, perplexingly, they would try to mate with the dominant male, and even more perplexing, the dominant male would not fight these attempts. He called a behavioral sink, or an increase in pathological activity in the rats due to the stress involved in such high population density. For the females, the behavioral sink manifested in reduced capacity for nest building and young rearing.
This happened, so it's like, damn, is this rat experiment that's going on in Tyrone rat maze experiments the same that's going on with us in these communities? And then you have to ask yourself, in the projects,
Right.
and who built these communities? We didn't build these communities.
You know, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us.
You must disperse immediately. This is no longer a peaceful protest when you try to injure people. You must disperse now.